And we're live.
Hello.
Hello. It is Sunday.
Sunday.
Generational Change.
I'm Jen.
I'm Peter. And I don't know. Are we still doing Sundays? What are we?
I don't know. I'm not loving doing Sundays. I feel like it's well, I mean, for you, it's not a big deal because you just sort of roll in like you're the talent and everything is all set up. But
I did show up early today to help up with
setup. You showed up 20 minutes before we got
Actually,
live.
25.
Oh. And part of that had to be allocated to you changing and you doing whatever.
I didn't change. I just made a shirt change. That was quick. But I think we got a lot done so far. We've made some adjustments. We may have jumped the gun a little bit on our new studio, but Jen is also dealing with a splitting head banging constantly because the bathroom.
We're having bathroom demolition happening. It's very loud.
But apparently it takes longer than expected.
We're going to get a break right now because they're on their lunch. They're going to do their lunch break. They're pretty much a 12 o'clock lunch break crew.
Yes, that is correct.
But it is so loud. I don't understand. It's not that big of a bathroom. Like, I don't understand why it's so intensive. Whatever.
Well, they're just making sure that all of these things get done. Kind of like my circumstance where I am attempting to get a condo right now, but it's been a completely redone condo, which is exciting. So that could be a very big step in my life. We are, of course.
I have to deal with your eyebrow. I cannot even with this.
Which
oh my
one?
God. You get these long unwieldy hairs that just sort of stick straight out.
I don't know. Do you guys like seeing us twice a week, or Jen is thinking we only need to go once a week?
Well, I don't know. I feel like right now there's all of two people watching, one of whom is probably Jason in the other room. So.
Gee, that's not God. You're so nihilistic.
No, I'm serious, but he does watch to see how everything is, and there's two people. So.
All right, look, we're a suppressed channel. It's
we
not
are
like
very
people
suppressed.
Don't like our content.
No, I know. For sure. It's frustrating, but I definitely am not so jazzed on Sundays because I feel like for me, it would be a nice lazy day. And instead I have to like get up and get everything done at a certain time.
All right. So what would be a better day? You want Saturday instead?
No, I don't want daytime. There's a reason we were doing evenings is because that coincides with my family life in a way that I don't have to crate my dogs if Jason's not here and he's home. Like it's just a pain.
So what about,
look, we were doing Mondays and Thursdays, but we got ousted from Thursdays. And then of course, part of the problem with being ousted on Thursdays is we could just get ousted any day. The other day we had something on Wednesday and we basically got, like bettered. It's just the nature of being small. We're small.
What button did I push? I don't know, Ren. Did you hit the like button? That's the most important thing. And if you can share the stream, that's obviously important as well.
But we have some good stuff today.
Yes.
First of all, we're having Sam back. Now I was kind of hoping, I told you, to have Sam back with somebody representative of the indigenous community of the Native American. I understand. And this is a conversation that I really wanted to have because I watched Sam on Reset Race. Well, it's really more of a listening to Sam on Reset Race. But and one of the things that they're the American Descendants of Slaves. It's the group that is seeking reparations that they're entitled to, which totally agree. And one of the things that they talk about is how very often people say, well, the Native Americans, like we lump their plights in as like they're the same, and they're completely not. And there's a lot of reasons for that. First of all, the indigenous community doesn't want reparations. They want their land back. Yeah. They're sovereign nations. They're not they're not citizens that were wronged, right? They are sovereign nations that were violated by our nation. It's just a different, it's sort of a different scenario. And what they're seeking is different. In a lot of cases, I have heard, and this is something we talk about with Sam, where indigenous communities have rejected reparations. They don't want our money. They want their land back. You know what I mean? Like it's different solutions to the problems. That's the key difference.
So obviously, we are waiting on Shaniyat. So in the meantime, I think it gives us an opportunity to talk about a very significant development from the other day. Obviously, there were a number of things that did happen. We saw that the Starbucks workers were able to successfully unionize in Buffalo.
Excellent.
Should set a chain reaction.
They're going to appeal it and they're going to fight it, and hopefully they can all stand strong.
That's what it comes down to. And one of the precedents that unfortunately is being set is we saw what's happening with the Kellogg's workers.
Exactly.
1,400 Kellogg's workers were fired for attempting to strike or have been striking, and then just decided, screw them, let's just fire them. Then we'll get other people to come work for our company. But it seems that a lot of people are making a very collective effort to say, do not buy Kellogg's products. And good, because
I feel somewhat like I have to confess that we do have Kashi products in my house. And I did recently realize that those are Kellogg, which I didn't know. But
I guess you're going to have to quit them.
Well, we'll see about that.
Oh, you must really like Kashi then.
Well, it's a matter of there's certain fiber situations.
There's always ways of getting fiber. Just like Post Raisin Bran.
I don't know, like
Post Raisin Bran's better than Kellogg's Raisin Bran anyway.
But anyway.
And if that's obviously what's happening in the labor movement is significant, there's always going to be a very, wherever there's positive, there's always going to be negative. That's the political world we live in. And that, of course, is Julian Assange has been given, as the U.S. has been granted extradition to send him back, to send him to the United States to face crimes that apparently he committed. Yeah, I know, right? It's funny.
I can't, but you know what? While we're doing this and we're talking about that, I just watched Tim Black was talking about this, and he made a point that I want to address because normally I'm really on with him, but he was sort of saying something about how there's a difference, and there is, in coverage of white people and Black people incarcerated and people being held, without due process. And there is no shortage of Black men being held without due. I'm not saying that there's not, but the reason, and he was sort of like, why should, and he wasn't saying he didn't care about Julian Assange because he does. He wasn't saying that from a perspective of why are we getting so much attention to Julian Assange? But that was sort of the gist of the conversation. And the reason is if you show me a Black man that is being incarcerated without due process, whose incarceration is a threat to our rights in this country. Like, this is bigger than just Julian Assange. That's why it's not because he's a white person. It's because he is a publisher that was printing the truth, and he could be any color, and it would be a bigger deal than just other people being incarcerated without due process, because there is a bigger fundamental issue here about it. I just wanted to put that out there. And I am very anti giving over coverage to white people for sure.
Well, I don't see how that necessarily is the gist of that particular issue here, which has more to do with, and I understand Tim's point, but obviously this has more to do with, freedom of the press, freedom of speech.
That's why.
These issues are obviously very substantial. And of course, if that's not enough to add insult to injury, unfortunately, Julian did suffer a stroke the other day.
No.
That's what they said.
I thought it was in October.
No, it wasn't. It was the other day.
Okay.
So he suffered a stroke. This was confirmed by his brother.
Which ultimately I do believe is their goal, is basically to
kill him. Absolutely it is. They don't like
the longer they can do this, I mean, his health is in serious decline. It's been, and most people's would be living in these conditions. Without due process, by the way.
Bottom line, this is why we need to remain more vigilant, and we need to be able to coalesce much better. And this is a conversation to be had right now with somebody who was part of a coalition of candidates with Brand New Congress. He ran in, oh man, I'm going to botch the crap out of this, New York.
Look, somewhere in New York, okay? Somewhere in New York. Is something to do with Jamaica?
I want to say six.
I don't know. Is something
six?
I don't know. It's Jamaica.
5.
Okay.
God, I was wrong by one number.
and now I know that Shaniyat's running for New York Assembly 24, right? 24.
Well, he has a big announcement to make. So we are welcoming back friend of the show, slate mate. You know him, you love him. He's from New York. Shaniyat Chowdhury, welcome back to Generational Change. And hopefully with a better connection this time.
Yeah, thanks for having me back on. I'm glad this is I'm not in my car and there's light, there's a room. This is my room, so welcome to my home.
Nice.
And welcome to our new studio. You can't really see it yet, but our lighting has improved substantially.
Our lighting has improved.
Better.
So was I right? Is it New York 24? Is that your seat?
Correct. Assembly District 24.
Okay.
Was.
Well, right. And so talk about that, because I know that there was a redistricting and that technically you don't even live in the district, but you're in the county. Like there's rules. So it's acceptable, but this is what just recently happened, right?
So correct. So you're partially correct, where we're still actually waiting for the redistricting lines to be drawn out. And I think they should be, the new map should be released January, February. But I decided to suspend my campaign yesterday for the mere fact that I do think that with everything that's been going on throughout the country, and even here in New York, I just think that we've got to build more grassroots organization and building that power from the ground up. So I decided to, it's not a big deal. Take the time just to reflect and think about how we could get back to drawing board and see what else we could do to really get new people in, right? It's about really bringing in new people in to really show these ideas that they've never been exposed to. So, yeah, so I'm taking a step back for now, but I'm going to try to work with groups like WFP, groups with like, a lot of criminal justice organizations where one of my biggest priorities is to really focus on the elderly parole bill here in New York. So a lot of people who might have served their time and who have gone through probation for more than 10, 15 plus years, I think it's time that they should be released and get a second chance in society. So I think that's where I want to put my energy on. And also education is a big thing for me as someone who is a public education teacher. The new chancellor coming in with Eric Adams as the new mayor. I think there's going to be a lot of battles between how we, how we fix public education system, not just here in New York, but I think this, whatever we do, it's going to set an example for the rest of the country. So I want to be a part of that fight. And I think right now, the best thing that I could do is just to be able to do that outside of the legislator and just do what the rest of the organizers and activists.
I think that it's smart. We talk about it all the time, that strategy is everything and timing matters. And you have to be cognizant of your surroundings. Like you need to have this sort of like self-awareness and realize what things are. And right now, I agree. I think we're needed on the outside before there's anything that can really be done on the inside, and certainly strategically in some places. But think 24, my friend, think 24, because after the Dems get themselves massacred in 22, and they're looking down either a Trump or a DeSantis presidency in 24, which the Democrats, as of now, really, who you got? Kamala, Pete?
Yeah.
So 24 is, to me, in my mind, going to be something where the revolution can happen, because it will be like the last straw. Yeah. And the Dems have nothing. So it's an opportunity. I'm just putting that out there.
And I thought it was going to take until 28, but things happen so quickly. I mean, we're in a political circumstance right now where you have a federal administration that is doing nothing, and then you have these, state governments that obviously New York is sort of the center of it all in so many ways with what happened to Cuomo. His lieutenant governor, who's now governor, is basically just a female version of him in terms of how she's governing. It looks like Jermaine Williams is going to be the progressive standout. There's also Zephyr Teachout, who's running for attorney general. Our focus from Florida is what can we do to help to ensure that the New York Health Act ultimately gets passed in the next legislative session, whoever the next governor might be.
Yeah.
It's a priority for us. I know it's like, because we feel there is a domino effect that will be in play with that. Florida will be last, I know. But we really think that it's going to start with the New York Health Act. And it's interesting because we had India Walton on the other day, and she is very, very involved with the Working Families Party as well. So when I heard you say that, I'm like, okay, good. Because it's like if you all team up there on the outside, you can make that happen. Like and we of course will support in any way we can, but I think that the New York Health Act is a huge priority.
I agree 110%. I think the biggest thing anyone could really do, whether you're in Florida or in New York, is really putting on the pressure on the state Senate, because the New York Healthcare Act passes in Assembly every year with the majority, but where we have challenges are at the Senate level, and then obviously with the governorship. So there's going to be some key races next year, especially in the state Senate. So there are candidates who I'm looking to support and help out who really support this bill. But also the governor's race, it's going to be a really important race, because not only is Jumaane Williams running, but there are other moderates who are looking for that seat who oppose this bill, right? You have
you know what though? I like a whole bunch of moderates in. Okay, let them all split their little neoliberal vote. That's not that's not necessarily a bad thing. Yeah. I'm just saying.
And now the fact that Letitia James is not running for governor, I mean, it just kind of, it opens the lane for Mr. Williams to basically try to cultivate as much of that support because I do think that there is an opening here. I really do. I think there's this opportunity where people are not wanting to elect anybody who has even a sniff of Cuomo or de Blasio, for that matter, around them. They really want to get away from that and really evolve into what this movement has been growing into. You know, everyone pays attention to, you know, Eric Adams winning the mayoral race. At the end of the day, there were so many key victories for, you know, when we're talking about the assembly, for example, via Sunrise, via the Working Families Party, via the DSA, they really did a great job and building that infrastructure. Again, it's not sexy. It's not what gets talked about, but this is how the Tea Party built their movement. And if the progressives are going to follow, especially in New York, they ain't following it here in Florida, but if they're following that in New York, that's how you're going to be able to overtake the corporate establishment, whether it's the New York Hospital Association, wherever that is, some of these very, you know, pro private insurance, big pharma organizations that is what is standing in the way. But it's much different trying to knock down that domino in Albany versus Capitol Hill. I'm
just curious. So now who is going to be the key person or who are you supporting for the seat for which you were running?
As of right now, no one's running.
Wow. So it's just an empty seat?
It's an empty seat with the incumbent still there. So politically, I was 98% sure I could win the seat without a doubt. But I think that there's so many other things that are more important to me at the moment, besides being in office. So
I think that's the thing that's important too. When you realize where you're most useful.
Yeah, and not only that, but considering your proximity to the 3rd congressional district, you know, we're obviously huge supporters of Melanie DeRigo and the fact that now it is an open seat and she has already won once before. She's raised a considerable amount of money. That is a non-corporate seat.
And that's like a purplish district. Is that what it is? Like it's not it's not definitively Democrat there.
No, that's true.
Okay, that's what I'm saying. So her winning the primary, she still has a general that she's got to contend with there.
Yeah, so New York 3 overlapped into Assembly District 24 where I was running at. But I do think that the more we coalesce around certain candidates or certain races, we have a better opportunity of winning. So that's another thing I thought about was like, you know what, I could bring my energy and my experience into helping out Melanie, who's a good friend of mine. But yeah, in District 3, it's a Democratic seat, but Tom Suozzi almost lost his seat in the general last cycle. So we do need to do a lot more relational organizing around there. We do need to get more boots on the ground when we start petitioning. And I do think Melanie has a great shot at winning the primary. I am confident. But general is like definitely where we're going to need everyone to come out and support her.
Okay, well, we will keep that in mind. I mean, look, so, you know, November, it's a little chilly, but, you know, we might be able to manage to get up there at some point in the fall.
Well, the primary's in June, right?
Yeah, but the primary, but that's not where you heard what he just said. That's not where it's
you want to be on the beach in Florida in June. You don't want to be spending your time in New York in June.
I want to be in the mountains in June. I don't want to be in New York or Florida in June.
Fair enough. And for our friend of the show, Dirtbag Leftist, yes, obviously there is going to be, and Tom Hartman has talked about this before, there is a certain clause that exists where federal funding for healthcare cannot be allocated if a state program, it's very convoluted, but
it's convoluted, but I do know that when we had on Rivera,
Gustavo Rivera, Senator Rivera, who he authored the bill in the Senate.
When we had him on, he explained it really well. Now, for me, everyone who knows, I hear, but rest assured, it's very feasible. That's what I know. It's feasible, and it would cover everybody.
Representative Ron Kim, another person who's a huge champion of the New York Health Act. I mean, this is really the difference between New York and California, because New York and California have the two biggest infrastructures in regards to the movement for single-payer health care. There is also much more of a substantial progressive groundswell in New York.
Yes.
There are people that are absolutely demanding now at this point that we move to a single-payer universal system because the for-profit middlemen simply don't need to exist. Nope. And I think that is one of the more interesting things that we notice with and we're going to have on Representative Mendez and I think it was Representative Brown, if I'm not mistaken, but two people in Rhode Island who are running for governor and lieutenant governor. I don't see enough of these non-corporate slates. Yeah, you have brand new Congress, but these are congressional campaigns that are being run in all different parts of the country.
I would do a statewide race in Rhode Island. You know how I said I would never want to run a statewide race? I would do one.
Yeah. Rhode Island's the size of Broward County, so
which is why I would run a statewide race there.
But ultimately, I think that that's where a lot of this really comes into play, is this idea that, well, not only do we have to coalesce, but it's almost like there has to be this non-corporate slate that ends up running, because if that happens, there is sort of this, I've got your back, you've got my back. We're not taking any of that corporate special interest money. And I think that will result in even bigger wins. How do you see that unfolding? And do you think that's a viable strategy going forward?
Yeah, I think that's exactly what we need to do. I agree. I think, we've seen it with this past year's election in November. Yeah, the Dems, we got the majority in the House and everything, but we failed locally, right? A lot of Republicans have won their seats locally. And then I think that's going to set the precedent for the next 10 years when we draw the lines again. So the Republicans and, just really people on the right who have all these crazy ideas filled with fascism, they're gonna eventually claim power. So I do think that in order for us to win and combat that, we do need to put a lot more focus on statewide races. And not just in New York, right? I think New York it's in a good position. We could definitely be in a better position, but there are states like Rhode Island that we should focus on. There are key states out in like Ohio we need to focus on. Florida is a great example. Georgia, right? So
Florida is kind of a lost cause. I mean, even the National Committee doesn't want to spend money.
No, but I have a little hope.
No,
I don't agree with that, because in Florida, the thing that's I always like to point out is that progressives and libertarians have a lot more in common than people are willing to admit. That is a big issue. And one of the things that is, because Florida is a very libertarian red state, that's why DeSantis is so popular. It's why Trump is so popular. And we get really great ballot initiatives in Florida, including ranked choice voting and the complete decriminalization of cannabis. And it looks like those two are very likely going to be on the ballot next year. And I think they're going to pass.
Well, and I don't know, Shaniyat, if you're aware, but we had more people in Florida vote for our $15 minimum wage than voted for Trump. Yes. Which is, so again, we do have that libertarian. There are a lot, it's working people, it's rural people, it's the people that are, they're not woke, but they believe in fairness and justice, that's the problem with the libs, is they just cannot grasp this concept of working with those people.
Well, they can't, because there is such a thing as the fact that we have such a bloated government. And when people talk about bloated government, is the fact that we have a lot of jobs that aren't necessary. We have jobs where people are paid a lot of money, and New York is a state where that is a big problem. Being able to cut the fat, that is something that progressives should not be afraid to run on, because you can get a hell of a lot of voters that will say, true. I'm tired of it. And when people wonder, why are taxes so high in New York? It's like, I can show you why. You may not like the reason, but there is something to that.
Somebody's skimming that money, I assure you.
And tax cuts don't pay for themselves. So let's be realistic about, what we need to do in order to fix a lot of these problems. But I still think that the key message is basically going on non-corporate representation. And regardless of whether or not you're a progressive, a moderate, a conservative.
No, and I say it 100 times, if you are from a conservative town, you should have a conservative representative. Like, that's not the problem. It's as long as they're beholden to their constituents. That's it. Nothing else matters.
Look, the North Shore has been was represented by Peter King for a very long time. And that's not to say that they're bad people. They are represented by a Republican, but who's to say that a non-corporate representative wouldn't appeal to that district? I would imagine that most people feel the same way.
And I'm still wanting to have a non-corporate Republican. The offer still stands. I'm putting it out there to anybody. If you know one, I'd love to talk to them on the show. If you know a non-corporate Republican candidate.
Yeah, and unfortunately, the only one who says that he's non-corporate is the worst one of them all, and that's Okay, with the exclusion of
we don't need pederasses on my show. No, so we don't need that nonsense.
And we definitely need, and again, I think the whole purpose of this conversation, which has been great, is this idea of So many of us got involved in the political process. We may have always been involved to some degree, but we really got involved during the whole Bernie Trump phenomenon. And that is sort of like this birth period, if you will. We get involved, we learn the ropes and this and that. But 5 years later, I think a lot of us are very seasoned now. And I think a lot of us are recognizing that, yes, strategy is a huge part of this process, knowing where investment should be made, knowing where you should be running candidates, where maybe you shouldn't be, and so on, initiatives and so on. I think that that's the next evolution of what we're doing here. And that's where I think we're going to get the most results, because we need that inside-outside strategy.
Yes. And I think it's, and I agree with Shaniyat right now. I feel, and I said this to you last year, like, we need to be on the outside right now. The inside is not the strategic.
This is at least for the next year, possibly the next 3 years, this is going to be a red wave of epic proportions. But that doesn't mean that the real birth of this non-corporate movement can't take shape, because if our focus becomes on a lot more of the grassroots local efforts, which is really where they need to be.
And that's where we need to be helping. And that, well, community like support and building community networks is what I know that everyone's working on right now.
Yeah. And I think that what you're doing in New York is sound strategy. And you're even saying, like, way ahead of time. It's like, look, we're facing the same issue here in Florida. Yeah, it's not only a red wave, but we still don't even know what our district lines are going to look like next year. So why put yourself in a situation where you are really unsure of where things are going, and do other things that allow you to set yourself up for better opportunities down the road?
Yeah, exactly that. That's exactly it, right? I think that initially we feel like anyone who's running that, this is our time, but it's not. When we think about it, it's just not really about the certain candidate running the race, right? It's really about what we're trying to accomplish in the foreseeable future for the next 5 to 10 years, because every decision we make is going to impact the next generation tomorrow. So, I do think that there's no rush for anyone to really run for office. I do think that the most impact we can have is outside of it, and we've seen it happen. Most recently here in New York City, we had the sexy medallion debt relief. And that happened with a lot of organizers, or a lot of former candidates who ran for office. And they accomplished that by putting on the pressure on city council, on the mayor, and they got it done, right? So it's showing you that these things are possible when you continue to talk about the issue. And that's what it's about, right? And so when we talk about another good example, defund the police, it's about really changing that rhetoric and that narrative by really talking to real life people, right? And not from what they see on the news, but really talking them face to face and really get them to understand, what does this mean?
Yeah, something as simple as just talking about what is the primary issue that could change policing in the United States, and that is ending qualified immunity.
You say that, I think that's a part of it, but that only handles the civil liability aspect.
But I still believe that is a significant domino that if that were to fall,
it would definitely effectively rein in more bad behavior.
And it would force the police to police the police.
It would.
That is what would happen.
It's unfortunate that it would have to be done that way.
But that's the blue line.
I know,
but that's the blue line. And the way they want to operate. Look,
I want to take their money and give it to the firefighters.
Shaniyat, you've served. I look at this as from the perspective of when the average citizen has an opinion about war. The only person's opinion about war that matters are people who are willing to stand on the front line and die for this country. If you're not, shut the F up, because your opinion doesn't mean anything. And
that's how I feel about men about abortion.
Sure. Why not?
When you said that, it really hit home. Like, you don't have a uterus. Bye-bye.
I think we're getting better. I know things are dire right now, but the night is darkest just before the dawn. We're going to do a lot more New York discussions going forward. We'll hope to have Lauren Ashcraft back. We'd love to have you back.
Of course, you are always welcome. You are always welcome, but you are definitely more appealing as a candidate as far as guest status. I'm just saying. But no, anytime you want to come on and promote or talk, you're always welcome.
Well, you've brightened up Jen's Sunday because, of course,
he knows I think you're so cute. You look so cute. The whole beard thing, I really dig it.
Shani, thank you so much for coming back on, and we hope you have a great rest of your day, and we will definitely be talking to you soon, my friend.
See you guys soon.
Bye,
Take care.
Bye, brother.
Thank you.
He's so cute.
Great dude. And of course, just really knows his stuff. And again, like you said, he recognized that it's not the right time.
And the truth is, it is not comfortable running when you don't know where your district is.
That's true.
It's just not. And I said that to you when right after our campaign, you were like, well, would you do it again? I'm like, we don't even know where our district lines are.
Not only that, but one other thing that I also want to point out, which is very important here, New York is a supermajority blue state. Okay, so if anybody is thinking that the reason you're not getting your district lines is because the GOP is doing something, right. No, you don't understand. They're all in this together.
They're all in a big club.
This is all about protecting corporate special interests and the representatives who are on the take with those corporate interests. That's it.
Okay. Remind me to tell you that I've been binge watching Dope Sick like a crazy person. It's insane, Michael. And if anybody, it's Hulu. And for anybody who ever doubted Michael Keaton, he gets better with age. Let me just say.
And he is Batman.
Okay, I'll give you Christian that, but he's really good in this series.
I would say Christian Bale is the best Bruce Wayne, but the best Batman, bar none, is Michael Keaton.
I know. Agreed.
So
agreed. Okay, so
we're moving on.
And we're gonna bring Sam on. And you know what? I honestly, as far as I'm concerned, she could just regularly come on and just sort of give like the Reset Race update, like what's going on. But I just recently watched something, and I'm having a total stoner moment right now. I watched the whole thing. I do, and as I get older, they're worse. But I was just watching something on there. It wasn't their own thing. They were showing something. It was really interesting. And now I'm just going to sit here and draw a blank. I don't have to write. It was like something that wasn't.
Well, hopefully Sam could drag it out of you.
I don't know. It was just put up like a couple days ago, and it was very educational. I watch a lot. It's not a good sign. But anyway, I wanted to specifically talk with Sam about what I had said earlier, if you weren't on, something that I've heard on their podcast, on the Reset Race podcast, has to do with how people tend to lump African Americans and indigenous and natives into a group of people that are worthy of or deserving of reparations. And I got to tell you, while in theory that's true, there's a lot of different groups worthy of reparations. That's like saying, okay, I'm suing this person for wronging me. They owe me $1 million. Okay. Now they very well might have wronged somebody else. But that is really not my thing. Like, I am dealing with what I'm dealing with. And people cannot grasp this. But we're going to talk about it.
We've heard enough of the white lady.
All right.
Let's hear from Sam.
The white lady
definitely need to hear from somebody who can definitely speak on this subject. You know where you love her. She's from the Reset Race. Sam, welcome back to Generational Change.
Hey, Sam. You're mute. You're muted. Unmute.
Hey, how you guys doing?
Hi.
Is my audio good?
Yeah, you're good.
How's the LA morning out there?
You guys.
Good to see you.
Well, I'm in the suburbs, but it's good.
So I know you heard what I was just saying. Do you by any chance know what it is I'm talking about that I saw the other day on your show that you guys put up?
I think what I put up was Mersa Baradaran. Yeah, I think it was Mersa Baradaran, The Color of Money.
Yes.
Where she was going through the different things with the banks and like how they pretty much how basically Black people saved a bunch of money in the Freedmen's Bank, and then white people were in charge and they stole all the money.
Well, okay, that I get all sorts of little educational tidbits, but the main thing was about this concept that people have that reparations, if you're going to talk about it for African descendants of slaves, then we need to just do reparations. Now, in theory, I agree. We should be giving reparations to people that deserve reparations.
So this is the thing. I don't have a problem with that. Like, the thing that everybody says is like, well, we've been, because we get a lot of whataboutisms when you start talking about reparations. When I start talking about reparations, people are like, well, what about the Native Americans? And I tell them, like, the Native Americans don't want reparations. They're sovereign. So they want their treaties upheld. They have treaties from hundreds of years ago that are not being upheld. So what I say is, you can't lump us in together because we have different claims. We want reparations. They want their treaties upheld. They want their land back. So I can say that and still support Native Americans in their fight to have their treaties upheld and get their land back. And this also happens with the reparations conversation as well, because right now we are pushing for Black American descendants of chattel slavery, United States ones. So you have to be a descendant of chattel slavery in this country. We have a lot of people from Haiti and other countries that did have slavery in their country. They have to sue the country that enslaved them. So it's not a they should not get reparations. It's a we should not be lumped in together because we're just a separate group of people. And then this even happens with other groups because people are like, well, the Chinese, they went through things, they burned down Chinatown. Again, that group of Chinese people, immigration pushed a whole new group, like something right now, like 2 out of 3 Chinese people are newer immigrants. So I have no problem paying reparations to descendants of those people. But if your family got here in the past 30 years, you're not connected. So there's no money for you. You got to go dig up those groups, those families.
Right.
I see Latinos talking a lot about stuff that happened to them and different massacres that they had. Again, I'm not against you being paid, but y'all got to do the work. The problem is Black Americans are the ones that are out here doing the work to prove their case, to get their money, and everybody's saying, well, what about us too? It's like you don't get to graft yourself onto our story. We have been here, like outside of Native Americans, we have been here the longest. We've been here longer than most white people.
Yeah.
And then people don't think about that because we're Black, but we have been here longer than most Americans.
Yeah.
I tell people all the time.
Well, and
people get mad at me because they'll be like, my family got here in 1910. I'm like, welcome, you're a newcomer.
Right. No, I get that. But let me ask you this. So I see when I look at, do you say ADOS, American Descendants of Slaves? Is that what it is, ADO?
Okay, so yes. So right now, I personally am using U.S. freedmen because after the release of slavery, they actually did call us U.S. freedmen. We had banks. So that's what I'm using. But yes, ADOS as well, American Descendants of Slavery. And some people use ADOX, so American Descendants of Chattel Slavery. It just kind of depends on who you're talking to, but it all points back to the same thing.
Okay, so here's my sort of philosophical question for you. You are very strategic about this, as you should be, and you look at this like, this is what we're owed, this is who we're owed by, write us our check. I agree. I think you should file, I think it should be a lawsuit, and I think you should and I think there should be a certain tribunal of people that allocate it, and however they oversee it, whatever. But this is my thought. There are so many people, though, that have been so crushed just because they're Black. They're not necessarily descendants of American slaves, but there have been so many generations of such this like systemic, like complete oppression. And so to me, I see that as a separate issue. I do think that descendants of slaves are owed what you're owed, just like if somebody wrongs you. And I was saying it before, if I have a lawsuit and I can show that I'm owed this, I'm owed this. That's a separate issue to me. But I think there needs to be even a broader concept to repair some of these.
I'm gonna give you a little push. I'm gonna give you a little pushback on that, right? My next door neighbors got here in the 1970s, right? They've been here. They're Mexican Americans. They've been here since the 1970s. They're 3 generations in now. So they came in, they got the kids. They came in, they had kids, and now they have grandkids. So they have 2 generations of Mexican Americans. They've experienced discrimination. They've experienced hard times. So why should people who came here after them in the 80s and 90s, which are the Caribbeans came in the 80s, Africans came in the 90s. So why should those people who came even later than them, and everybody came after stuff was good. So for me, I actually think what we should do is we should pay reparations to American descendants of chattel slavery, and then we should do the class stuff that everybody talks about. Like, I'm a big fan of wealth redistribution. I'm a big fan of a federal jobs guarantee. Like, I'm a big fan of fixing poor whites as well, because there's a lot of people who are poor whites whose family have been poor whites since the Civil War, and we pretend like they don't exist. There's 40 million poor white people in this country, and we act like they don't exist because they're not people of color, but they're still poor, and they've been here forever. Yeah. So for me, I'd like to my whole thing is, why don't we fix the floor and just pay the people that we owe? Because no disrespect, we don't really owe those groups anything because they chose to immigrate to a racist country. But as an American citizen, you do deserve a certain quality of life. And I think that should be given to all Americans, and it shouldn't just because you're a person of color. Like I said, reparations is a different thing because it's owed, but we should all have a certain standard of living as American citizens, no matter what color you are, whether you're a poor white man in Appalachia, whether, you're an Asian woman, Black man, whatever. Like, there should be a certain level, certain standard in the richest country in the world that has nothing to do with, our reparations test.
Right.
So I'm not heartless.
No, and I understand what you're saying. And to me, it is a completely separate issue. But just so much research that I've done, you know, and I think about, I can look at Mexicans and I can look at different groups of people, but like our tax codes were written anti-Black. Like there's certain things that are just in our system that are just anti-Black. And I guess it could be extended to, yes, people of color, you know, I mean, it's not like we're all good to brown people, you know, I mean, it's definitely a problem, but I feel like our Constitution was written on racism. I mean, you got 3/5 compromise. Like there are things that are embedded here that are anti-Black. And I don't know that affects more than just descendants of slaves. And that's what I'm talking about. So I think I just sort of see it as a multi-tiered thing. And I think that that's part of the problem that you guys encounter is people hear reparations and their mind goes to this whole big conundrum of what is that, when what you're talking about is just being paid the money you're owed, which is really quite simple.
Money, land, protections, yes.
Yeah. But you know what I'm saying? Like we need to have an overhaul of the systems, because whether you came here in the 80s and you're Black, you're still paying a white tax code. And that has been penalizing you financially for years. I don't know if you read Black Tax.
I haven't read it yet, but I have added it to my list because of you. So I did watch a couple of her interviews. I have a good general understanding of it.
Yeah,
but definitely. But also sometimes, sorry, I don't want to get too deep in this because I'm not anti-Black. I'm not anti-Black immigrant. So I'm always kind of like trying to be very like tiptoe because there's a lot of diaspora wars going on. But some Black immigrants come here with money. So they are in a different class, wealth, and bracket than a lot of, you know, just everyday, ordinary Black folks, I guess, to say about it, right? So like, yes, some of them experience discrimination, but there's also studies that have been said that they are preferred to Black Americans in hiring. So it's still like a lot of little funny stuff that's going on. So again, it's still one of those things like, it's not like I have it on our Reset Race page, but she basically talks about the number one thing is to be white, but after that, the second thing is not to be Black. So all the other groups, they still, to be honest, these other groups really are just having a regular immigrant experience in this country. Like if you think about when the Irish came, no Irish, no, you know, they were discriminated against. Over time, they got to become white. This happens with most groups except for Black Americans. Like everybody else kind of gets to fold in over time.
I definitely agree. We're speaking with Sam of Reset Race. I think that when it comes to the issue of reparations, all people just hear is, oh, you're just trying to give people a handout. What has been, from your perspective, are there any keys to, you know, convincing people, no, this actually does need to happen? I always say that, you know, the banks are, you know, the power of the banks goes without saying in terms of where financial investment is made in this country. And that has a lot to do with why this is necessary. So we'd love to hear your thoughts on that.
So part of it is, okay, so a lot of people are like, well, you were never enslaved, so there's no harm here. But the actual, Thomas Kramer points out that the actual harm is the people who made the money, their money was stolen and given to somebody else, and their descendants are still able to live and capitalize off of that money. That's the injustice. The injustice is those people are still living off that money that should belong to the descendants of those people. And as for convincing people, to be honest, there's just different tiers of people, right? There's the people who just are never going to be for it. They're never going to go for it, right? Then there's the people who are kind of in the middle. And once you start like breaking down the history, because what I realized when I talk to a lot of white people is they think Black people and white people are like in the same condition. They think like, oh, you know, there's some poor Black people, there's some middle class Black people. They think we have more class. They don't understand when you fold us in with you guys, like 4 of our levels are down like in the bottom, like 3 of our levels are below yours or in the bottom with you. And then like even our richity rich are like still in your higher wealth levels. Like they're not even like at your top. And I'm not advocating for a bunch of Black billionaires and trillionaires because we need to help people. But I'm just saying, I think a lot of people just think that Black people are in a better situation. So I think a lot of times when you start explaining the situation, the systemic racism, a genuinely good person is going to be like, okay, I can understand. Yeah, you guys deserve your money. And then some people you just meet and they're just like, oh yeah, of course I'm for it. But it's, you kind of fall in one of the camps because some people are just never going to be for it. Some people are a little skeptical. You give them a little information, they're good.
To me, it's a no-brainer.
I think the issue is people just don't believe Black people should not be poor. Like they really, no, they do. They really think it's like, they think it's a personal characteristic flaw. Like to be a Black American means that you're dumb, lazy, and poor. Like this country has done a very good job of propagandizing people against Black Americans.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. I mean, look, the divide and conquer goes back many, many centuries from when all the people were poor and indentured servants that were being brought here with masters. And you know the history. And of course, that's an easy way to keep people down, is to tell some people that they need to punch down. That's what it is. If we get everybody kicking down.
Well, I think a lot of people don't even understand, like before Bacon's Rebellion, there was no white classification. Like you were Irish, you were German, you were Protestant. Like these were how they classified you. You were African, you were either enslaved or free, you know what I mean? Indentured or free. And then after Bacon's Rebellion and everybody got together and they fought the oligarchy for a year, they created white so they could separate and create a buffer class. They're like, okay, we're going to give you guys a little bit of something here so y'all will stop teaming up with the slaves and burning everything down and trying to kill us. Like, so when people talk to me like, well, it's all about class, it is, but Black is the class that was created to be under white. So now you guys are using new constructs that did not exist when this was created. Like there wasn't brown, there wasn't all these other things. Like, and then even today I saw this young lady and she was like, I guess this school in Washington, they started classifying Asians as white. And she was like, well, I guess I'm white now. But I was like, but if you look at the history of this country, people become white all the time. North Africans are white. So I could be from North Africa, be this color, and be classified as white in this country. It is literally like a category. It's a legal category. It's not a color. It's not like, I just need people to understand that. So a lot of times people get very frustrated. It's like, well, you're talking about white people and whiteness. It's like, I'm talking about the construct. I'm not necessarily talking about you as people, because the whole construct of whiteness was set up to oppress people.
I think we also
it just kind of is what it is.
Yeah, people don't want to hear that. We keep saying all this stuff, anti-critical race theory, all these things, which is basically just people not wanting to understand history. And it's really, to me, on the one hand, it's outrageous. But on the other hand, it means that you're needling people, and it means that you're getting somewhere when you're getting people stirred up about something, because more and more people are becoming aware of actual history. So it wouldn't be being suppressed if it wasn't seen as threatening. So I see it, but I will, it's absurd.
Yeah, we also have.
I would like to think that. Oh, sorry. I was gonna say I would like to think that most Americans are like, most people are genuinely good, and like they don't like injustice. Because I watch how outraged people were when babies were at the border. I've seen people be, we all saw the outcry for George Floyd. Like, I've seen people in this country care about a lot of stuff. I think people have just become numb to Black people.
I think it's there's a big problem with virtue signaling. There's a lot of times people will say things that they actually want to see, but the second a person of color shows up as their neighbor, then they have a real problem. And this is this is why so many communities are gated. And the ones who live behind those gated walls on the liberal side tend to be the loudest.
They're very afraid.
Yeah,
they're afraid. They're afraid. Look,
but there's also a problem in society with envy and vanity. People want to be they want to be able to look down at other people and say, well, at least I'm not there. I'm rising, I'm growing, and it's easy to scapegoat because that's the nature of our system.
It's like who said that? Was it Lyndon B. Johnson when he was like, if you let a white man look down on a black, let a poor white man look down on a black man and you'll be able to pick his pockets.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
Like, that's really what it is. So no, we have to, like I have no problem coming together. It's just the problem that when everybody wants to come together, it's always putting Black people on the back burner. And again, we've been here the longest. Like Native Americans are owed more, but at least they've gotten some payments here and there. Like we've got nothing.
Nothing. I take issue with anybody around that says that somehow they are not participating in that system, because we're all beneficiaries of the system. And here's the thing, people. When Black people are given their reparations, it's going to come out of all of our collective resources. So Black people essentially are paying for it too. It's not like it's, I don't understand how people don't understand that it's the nature of the collective.
We're speaking with Sam from Reset Race. Sam,
let her say, she's going to say.
No, I was going to say also, people don't think about all the years that Black people paid taxes and didn't get our resources.
Yes.
Like all those years that we were separate but equal and all this, like we were putting money into your tax system too. And even now we are the tax revenue for states, because they literally are using us for tickets and violations, and they are funding whole municipalities on poor Black people's backs. That's why there was the uprising in Ferguson. So like, there's a lot going on.
It's in everything, people. We actually have in Florida, I don't know if you're at all familiar with our corrections institutions here in the state of Florida, our lovely accommodations, but there are several towns in northern Florida, and they're basically run by Black families that control the prisons. And it is very, and it's very old school, like generations of this. And I have a very good friend of mine who spent some time in one of their nice accommodations, and I have heard, I mean, obviously horror stories, but
I can only imagine.
They're private run family things, and they basically are the whole town. The entire town is for this facility, and they're Black towns. And it was very eye-opening to me, because it never occurred to me that they would be Black families. You know what I mean? It never occurred to me. And
that's where people get to use their favorite word, class. That's where people get to use their favorite word, class. Yep.
And that's a great segue, Sam, because I still think one of the biggest reasons why we have, the Black community in particular at what would be considered the bottom rung of society is because the Black voices that are allowed to speak on corporate media are always ones that are not going to rock the boat. In fact, they are going to do things that are completely juxtaposed to any real substantial problem. They'll always scream racism, but they do it in such an incendiary way as to divide people. They're not actually talking about the systemic problems. And anytime the people who are really going to talk about the systemic problems, Nina Turner, Dr. Cornel West, they are cast out as, lepers, basically. Like, don't listen to them. They don't know what they're talking about. Listen to these ones over here. The ones that have been on TV
like
for the last
Jim
25
Clyburn
years.
Or Al Sharpton.
Yeah. Like that to me, I think.
Yeah, those guys.
Those guys
are mine.
A huge part of the problem.
I like those guys are mine, but like we get mad because we have like Joyanne Reed talking for Black Americans, and she's not a Black American who descends from chattel slavery. Her people come from Guyana. Mark Lamont Hill, he's not a Black American. We got a lot of people speaking for Black Americans who are not Black Americans, and we are the majority. Now, of the Black population, there's like 43 million Black people. 36 of them are Black Americans who descend from chattel slavery. We are the majority, but we have very little voice in public. Most of the people you see speaking for us are not us. Just like that movie Them. Or not, was it Them? Or yeah, it was Them. Right? No, it was Us. That movie Us. When they were all tethered and stuff. Yeah.
That's really interesting. So basically, a small minority of people that happen to have the same skin color as you are branded as spokespeople for an entire group of people, when in fact those spokespersons are not in that group of people. Is that basically what we're saying?
Yep. And then the Black Americans, you see, they're normally not connected to the community. So a lot of times there's a class factor. So a lot of the Black Americans that you actually see speaking, those are the descendants of multi-generational college graduates, or you understand what I'm saying, or old school civil rights leaders, or you know what I mean, people who are good and fit well in the system. And like you said, they're not going to rock the boat because for a lot of them, like they haven't really, a lot of these people have never been around poor Black people. Just because you're Black doesn't mean you've been around poor Black people. A lot of them don't know the real struggle. Like they just don't. So they have no connection to it. They're no different than, forgive me, they're no different than white people. Like, I hate to say it like that, but it's true.
this is how I feel about Kamala Harris. People like that are held out as she's held out as like the first Black woman in this position. And as a white person, I'm not going to take a stand on that. But I don't consider her.
Yeah, I have a stand.
It's not just that.
She's not. She's Jamaican Indian and Indian. Like her father is a Jamaican Indian.
Sam, it's not just that. It's the fact that she has extremely Caucasian features in so many ways.
But she hasn't lived a Black experience in this country. She wasn't raised
money-wise. Exactly. Both of her parents were professionals in the 1950s, like professors. Like how many, you can't find that many Black double couple professors in the 1950s. And then when stuff got hot, they moved to Canada. So she spent like her formative years. God, I don't even want K-Hive come at me.
The K-Hive. First of all, they hate me. They're so mean to me. I can't deal with the K-Hive. But I find people like her getting to positions of power, it's a travesty because
Obama's the same way. It's the same type of stuff.
Yeah, I always said that about him. It's like, yes, he's Black.
We call it cosplaying Blackness. Yeah, it's a form of cosplay. It's like, okay, I'm gonna put on African American vernacular. I'm gonna pretend like I like hip hop. I'm gonna talk about how I smoked weed listening to Tupac, but Tupac wasn't making music yet. Like, it's all this performative Blackness.
She's a phone.
Very, very disrespectful. Like, if a white person was doing this, people would be offended.
Well, wait a minute. She's doing it and I'm offended. She does it and I'm
offended too.
I find it rude and I find it obnoxious that they're playing a race card with her. Obama also, and I said it all the time, he was not raised with a Black experience in this country. He wasn't. No. He did not grow up.
And his father is Kenyan. People have to remember still, like, even on top of that, his father was not a Black American. So he didn't have Black American grandmothers, aunties, cousins. Like, his family was Kenyan. So he was connected to the immigrant experience. And then through his mother, he was connected to whiteness. That's why he looked down on us too. Like, go back and watch those old Obama speeches. Like, he went to, I think it was like, was it Morehouse? It was like at a graduation. He was telling nobody's gonna care if you struggled or da-da-da. This is at a graduation. Could you imagine him going to like a white woman's school and telling those gorgeous white women graduates that nobody's gonna care about their feelings and anything in this world? Like, you made it. Shouldn't you get the pep speech? Like, congratulations, you made it. You're going to go out in the world. You can be great. Instead, you get to like pull yourself up by the bootstrap speech at your graduation from college. I don't understand.
Yeah, well, he's just so elitist. He's just so elitist. And they're just so to me, the Obamas are now in the same place as how I think of the Bushes, the Clintons, this is just American elitism and aristocracy. That's all it is. And when you're in that group, that's your group, and it doesn't matter what your color is. So he is not, to me, in any way indicative of what I think of as working for a better Black community. He could care less because it's about him.
This is the thing. Like, I'm a suburban Black kid. Like, I grew up in the suburbs. Like, most of my struggle came over the last 8 years just because of who I chose to date, and I took on their struggle for a period of time. So, like, I learned a lot as a suburban Black who started dating a person who was from the inner city projects, who had all kinds of trauma, went through all kinds of craziness, and had family members murdered, seen people murdered, been through like all kinds of stuff. And he would tell me stories sometimes, and I would be like, damn, how did you survive? So like, I had to like literally be with my people to really understand what was going on. Like, and I feel like that was a privilege. Like, I am blessed to really understand what's going on in my community, but a lot of people aren't doing that. And when they do, they come in a weird, like, funny, benevolent, like, I am coming here to save you, lowly Negroes. Here, aren't you happy I'm here with you? It's like, that's not how you interact with people. You need to get in on the ground floor and actually get to know people.
Yeah, I always say, and this is the truth from our entire campaign, the greatest privilege was having an opportunity to really be in that community and understand a community that I would have otherwise and in a very personal way, and make friends and really see things. And that has been life-changing.
But also
life-changing. And I've always been very progressive. Like, I've always been supportive. Like, if you had told me 15 years ago, we want reparations, I would have said, of course you should have them. Like, I've always been of that mindset, but I never saw it like really saw it. And now I feel like I have,
but I think
it's changed my life.
The experience of being in the Black community as extensively as we were and seeing exactly how and why there is so much distrust to the outside, the things that would happen, the way that the colonizers, if you will, modern day, but the way the colonizers would come into the community to try to spread cheer for 5 minutes and then they're gone because they want something, and that's obvious.
They want your vote.
So that is in one part the evolution. But one thing that I think is very distinct, and we've seen it over the past 5 years, is that there really is, no pun intended, a generational divide within the Black community.
Yes, very much.
There is if as distinct as any numbers we're probably seeing between Hillary and Biden versus Bernie 16 and 20 is this idea that I don't know where the break happened. Maybe it was the age of 45. Maybe it's a little bit younger than that. But overwhelmingly, under that age, the Black community supported Bernie Sanders. And in an unbelievable 180 in the other direction, supported Hillary and Biden, if you're over that age.
Yeah.
Well, that divide, I think, is very real. And I think it speaks to the people who are very trusting. And this is a one of the most significant problems on people who are liberal, is that they overwhelmingly trust corporate media.
I actually want to say, I think,
I
think a big part of the generational divide in the Black community is church related. And what we see here, and it's really interesting. So my friends who are, fighting, like they're constantly fighting, these are the people that are on the ground trying to save their neighborhood and their communities. And they are constantly butting heads with the pastors and the church people. And those are the people that support people like Jim Clyburn. Those are the people that get involved in the Democratic Black Caucus. And those are the people, unfortunately, that come out and vote. And they do tend to be older. And it is definitely a divide. And the churches in our community are very, I think, detrimental to progress for the Black community. That's just, and we see it left and right here.
That's always kind of been a case. If anybody gets a chance, look up, it's on YouTube, but it's hard to find, but it's like Spies of Mississippi. It's either called Spies of Mississippi or I think it's under Spies of the South. But they literally were paying people during the civil rights movement, like preachers, pastors, important people in the community, literally to tell on people who are trying to organize and do activism. You have to understand, a lot of Black people want things to stay the way they are because it solidifies their position. Again, that's like a class divide. So you were talking about the church, there's a church divide, there's a generational divide, and then there's a class divide. When you look at the generational divide, it's the people who actually got affirmative action and then their children. So the people who got affirmative action, they are on that side up because they have pensions, they had good jobs, they were able to buy a house over the time, they have good health care in their retirement, they're good. Their kids have student loan debt, no homes. That's where it is. That's where the break is. So it really is a class divide, because for us, when a lot of our boomers die, some of them are going to pass that money to their kids, but a lot of them are selfish and are blowing that shit. So when they're gone, the money's gone and their kids are going to have nothing.
Yeah, you guys, I mean, it's definitely a generational wealth problem. This is the key issue, is that the money that you're owed, getting back to reparations, there's a lot of interest, people, and the clock is ticking. So it's like there's a lot of money owed, you know what I mean? Like, so I feel like that has been what has kept the wealth gap and perpetuates it, has been going on for centuries, is this, lack of generational wealth. It's a problem, and it makes it harder and harder. So, I mean, and
they steal from us every generation too. So like, first of all, like, they stole our original labor, which is a lot of money. $6.4 quadrillion if you use the high interest rate, because you can use a 6% interest rate, it's $6.4 quadrillion. If you use a 3% interest rate, it's like 17 trillion. But y'all have taken forever, so I'd like to lean towards the high end, and then y'all can fight. You can fight me down on it, but
hey,
I
listen,
like.
if it's being done at the interest rates that investment banks charge, then yes, it would definitely be at the high end. So why not? Let's just do it the way they do.
I think so too. I agree. And that's just labor. That's not including pain and suffering. That's not including the 40 acres and a mule. So I actually think that's a discount. And you can pay it out over 80 years for 3 generations.
You're being generous today, Sam. They
You
might as well
are,
get a
and
strike.
So generous.
No,
So
and look,
generous.
we're talking about generations of tax theft.
Mm-hmm.
Like it's not just from
and just the stuff they stole, all the places they burned down, like Rosewood, Tulsa, Wilmington are not the only ones. Like there's places that they literally pushed everybody completely out of the county. Forsyth County still barely has any Black people in it, and it expelled their Black population in the early 1900s.
I'm just looking.
This happened all over the place.
I'm just looking forward to 2024 when Jim Clyburn endorses Pete for president and says, "Oh, he's so perfect for."
I cannot. Oh, speaking of that, you guys have to have Marcel come on. Marcel is running against Clyburn in South Carolina, and he's at least annoying. They're definitely tired of him. He was talking about, he was on the USA Today reparations call on Twitter Space.
So he's a Democrat challenging Clyburn.
Mm-hmm.
Oh.
Perfect. He's a teacher. He is really. I have an interview on my channel. Check it out. He gives a good interview. You'll really like him.
Be happy to. I mean,
but again, yeah, he's out here. He's running on reparations. He also has a plan for his white people in the district too, because he knows they're suffering. Like, Marcel is very charismatic. I think even if he doesn't beat Clyburn, I think this is the beginning of something great for him. I could definitely see him either running for.
Good. Clyburn's got to go. Like,
but we got to start here.
There's also a gentleman, Jermaine Johnson, who's in the State House in South Carolina. He's part of Humanity Forward with, he was part of Andrew Yang's coalition, but he's great too. I mean, there are young Black leaders that are coming up that are non-corporate, that recognize what the real problems are, and they are not going to be shunned by the older civil rights era generation that still think that they have to, you have to gravel to them.
We have one still left down here, and there's this level of entitlement. There's this level of we call
her the Hat Lady.
She's the Hat Lady. But
I know who she is. That Frederica?
Frederica. We had her and Elsie, but then Elsie died.
You want to talk about condescending?
Let me tell you. So I have a friend who
I could only imagine.
I have a friend, Christine Olivo, who challenged Frederica in the primary, and Christine is so sweet. And she goes up to her and introduces herself, very professional. They were at an event together and she introduced herself. And Frederica went off on her in a way like, you know how many people are waiting their turn for that seat? Where do you get, went off on her at this event.
Yeah. See, where's your turn?
Yeah.
Your turn.
It's like, why do we have to wait for certain people to die off to have some things get made better? And if these people
this old guard stuff is ridiculous.
Why is that?
This is how I feel.
But that's something that's.
This is how I feel about that civil rights age. It's like the Batman thing, right? Either you die a hero or you live to become a villain. Look at all of them. John Lewis.
Yeah.
Freaking even Angela Davis told us to vote for Biden.
But then you have to.
I don't know.
I think is important because the two of who are considered the prominent leaders, sickening as it may sound, of the Democratic Party are Jim Clyburn and Maxine Waters, and there is sort of this unwritten rule that you cannot speak ill of them. I mean, Maxine Waters commits federal crime every day because she doesn't live in her district. You are not allowed to be
and that's wild to me.
You are not allowed. It's in federal law. You cannot do it. And she's been doing it for 30 years.
Isn't that bizarre?
And it's been time for her to go. It's just so frustrating. All of this is for Black people. You got to understand, Black Americans right now, we want the CBC gone. This is one of the things that white people say to me, well, the CBC has 53 seats and they're not. And I'm like, first of all, the majority of the CBC are Black immigrants. Sorry, here we go again. I hate to keep bringing this up, but there's a reason they don't care about Black American issues. And also, the money is in the people of color. It's not in Black stuff. I had a friend who used to work at a nonprofit. I'm not going to name the nonprofit, but when people would come in with projects that were Black targeted, they would try to push them towards doing people of color. People who are Latinos could come in and have a project for Latinos, and they would push it as a Latino project and give them all funding in the world. Black people have to be people of color. People of color get to be their ethnicity. Like that's what's going on with that too. So they're focused on other groups instead of us. Like, how much have you even heard the CBC talk about reparations or push reparations? But you heard them talking about doing a equality act, doing like an equality act over here for this group or for that group. And this thing, I'm not against you doing stuff for other people, but why is it you have to be the leader of it? Like, there's all these people of color and white people in Congress, but y'all always have to be the face of those things instead of taking care of your own group, or at least trying to, especially for people who live in Black districts. If you're a Black congressperson and you live in a mixed district, of course you should be making sure that you're tending to everybody's needs. But you also have to make sure that you're fixing your own people. Like, what's the point of having all these Black faces in high places when we're in a worse situation than we were in the 60s? Like, it's just fake.
I think that
I don't feel like I have representation.
And I think that there's a huge tie-in here to the fact that this all connects back to the Democratic Party establishment. And why is that? Because over 90, unconscionably, that the number is this high, with all due respect. But the fact that over 90% of the Black population in the United States votes Democrat every single election. What do you think is going to happen? You are a slave to the Democratic Party. They don't owe you ish. You have already given away the farm. You're like, oh, I'll vote for you no matter what you do.
Giving away the milk for free. No, it's so funny that you said that. There was literally this Hispanic dude on Twitter, and he was like, no, Latinos are going to keep their vote split. We learned for what you did to the Blacks. We're not stupid. I had to laugh. All I could do was laugh because he's not wrong.
No, it's not wrong. And I've come to the realization the Congressional Black Caucus is just, wait, don't do that while I'm talking. The Congressional Black Caucus is just a caucus of Black people. That's it. They don't serve
Black skin people.
They just all happen to be Black. They don't serve those interests. They don't fight for those issues. And the fact that
they might as well just did a caucus on bowling.
Well, it doesn't matter, right? They just happen to be Black. It doesn't serve anything. When they endorsed Eliot Engel over Jamal Bowman, that was it for me. And now that Jamal Bowman is in there, I am so dying to have him on the show and ask him, are you now a member of the Congressional Black Caucus? I'm sure he is. And what's that like now that you're in the caucus with the people that were endorsing Eliot Engel against you? Like, I cannot stand that caucus, and I'm not even really allowed to say that out loud. There, I said it.
Well, let me tell you something. When we get back into the White House in 24, and we're totally getting back there, believe me when I tell you, the Blacks love me. They know I'm a great guy. What do you have to
And lose? The gag is, I could literally see like 15% going for Trump on Black people. Black people are pissed.
Well,
like, they're mad. They're mad all across the board.
Sam, as well they should
Sam, I'm going to hire you. You're going to be great on this campaign. We're winning California this time.
See, this is the thing. I can't be a Republican because I don't hate Black people. Like, the Black Republicans that they push to the prominence, you have to talk down and hate Black people. I can't do all of that. Like that,
and that's how it is here locally.
That's
too,
totally totally fake news. You're making things up. I don't like you anymore, Sam. You're a terrible person. I gotta go.
No, the truth is that
no, it's true. I don't think all Republicans are racist, but I think that they make for you to be a Black person. Like, there's a certain level of selling out that they need you to do for them to like put you up front.
No, all Republicans are not racist.
My ancestors will torture me in my sleep.
I'll tell you, all Republicans are not racist. But all Republicans are in a party that supports racist policy.
And so is the Democratic.
Same with the Dems, though. The Dems got racist policies too. I feel like I'm just getting slapped on both sides. I feel like both my parents beat
the only real
where you go.
The only real difference between the two parties is that they made a conscious effort. Remember, there was no one, just like Clyburn is very powerful in the Southern Black communities. The same was true for Strom Thurmond when it came to the white communities in the South. And the GOP behind, sort of the movement that, Reagan and Barry Goldwater started was, we are going to dominate the South, and work because of, what Kennedy was starting with the civil rights movement. They're like, oh, well, this is our opportunity to swoop in and get this part of the population. It's almost like, no, the parties didn't change. They just seized on an opportunity with people who were living where they were to get them to vote for their side. I can still remember going to Orlando back in 2017 when Gillum had just gotten in the race for governor, and listening to the old white biddies talk about, they'll never vote for a black man for governor. You're showing your hand. You're saying right now that no, you are actually a bigot and you won't vote for him. Your attitude is supposed to be, he is the best candidate, which he was, and we're going to support him and make sure he wins, instead of saying this cover crap behind the scenes.
So the funny thing is, you said it. I'm pretty sure there's a bunch of black people who said the same thing. Can we just say that we have a lot of skeptics around? Because I get that from reparations. People are like, well, I believe you should get it, but I don't think it's ever going to happen, so I'm just not going to bother with it. And I'm like, well, could you just not? I'm like, well, so you'll be neutral? You'll just shut up? If you'll just shut up, that's great. I'd rather you be neutral than be against. But yeah, no, that happens all the time. I think a lot of people understand we still live in a racist country, and I think everybody is just trying to, like, do you guys watch Irony at all? Irony Ose Frimpong?
No.
Oh, you gotta watch Irony. You'll love Irony. You should have him come on. He talks a lot about like whiteness and the white family, but he basically talks about how like everybody's afraid of poking the bear, which is white supremacy. Like everybody, white people, black people, because if the bear comes loose, it can kill us all. And that's what people are really worried about. And he talks about it all the time. Yeah, you guys gotta watch some Irony.
I do.
I know it's hard when you do a show all the time.
No, but it's also.
I'll email you all the stuff.
Yes, please.
And I think this is a great place to wind down the conversation. It's this whole idea of whether it is a Joy-Ann Reid, whether it is a Jonathan K. Part. I mean, we could go through the list, but the truth of the matter is they're part of that class, which is I'm going to do whatever I have to do to protect my class. When the rarity comes along, like an Ed Schultz or a Phil Donahue who says, no, my principles are more important than continuing to further this message. Ed Schultz was always a progressive, but there was no real non-corporate progressive who was running. When Bernie finally decided to run, Ed was making it his mission in life to get Bernie's message out there. And when MSNBC said, you are not doing this, he said, take this. And he was the only one who was willing to do that. Everyone else, like a Rachel Maddow, who if you listen to her when she was on Air America, you would think she was a super progressive. But then the money came along. And then the opportunities came along.
That's it.
And that's it. And to the people who need help, the hell with you. I'm high on the hog now, baby. Hello, you're way down there. I see you, but you can't reach me. And
that's so funny. I'm sorry to interrupt you. That's so funny. It reminds me of the Fred Hampton thing where he talks about that's the importance of a political education. Because if you don't have a political education, you won't know why it's important that you're doing what you're doing. And then you'll just want stuff. And before you know it, you'll want more. Then you'll be an imperialist. That shit runs for white people too. It's just funny how that works with leftists as well. Because if you don't have a strong foundation when you get started, you're going to get corrupted by the money.
Sam,
it's easy to buy you.
Look at what Simone Sanders did. I saw what she did behind the scenes back in 2016. I'm like, this person basically called the cops on runaway slaves. She just figured out, I got my opportunity. Goodbye. And then she pulls the freaking race card on people who want to call her out for backstabbing Bernie. It's like this shit doesn't end. And it's not going to until people say, we're not taking this anymore. I don't care what your color is, what you look like, what your sex is, what your pronouns are. I don't give a damn. I just care if you're on the level or not. And if you're not on the level, you got to get called out on it. And that's as we always say on this show, the unifying issue of our time is corporate special interests controlling our government. And until we identify that is what is preventing reparations, that is what is preventing universal health care, that is what is preventing a living wage, and that is what is preventing us from having a robust climate plan to save our goddamn planet. It is never going to happen until we unify around this issue. And the more we try to figure out these little nuances about, oh, you're not progressive enough, you're not conservative enough, we're all going to hell. And I don't want to go to hell. I want to live on earth and enjoy my time.
Yeah. This country needs, like, all people need to become policy voters. Like, at this point, we don't have time to do cults of personality. Like, we don't have time to, like, we don't even really have time for party. Like, what policies are you promoting? Do your policies match up with my values? Like, that's kind of where we got to be at this point. Because, like, I feel like we haven't been holding these people's feet to the fire, right? We've just been allowing them to give us all crumbs, all of us, and say it's okay. And we can't do that anymore. Like, our survival depends on it. Like, we're at a point where people are just like, it's going to start getting dangerous for all of us because people are going to just have no hope. And when you have no hope and no options, what do you do? And
Do
it's not just going to be it's not just going to be the poor blacks out here acting crazy.
Do you
It's going
sense
to be
that
poor white people.
Do you sense we're hitting a breaking point? Because I think we might be. I think we're getting close.
So I have that feeling, but I'm a historian. I read a lot of history books. So like, for what I've read, like, to be honest, we're late.
Yeah, we're late. You say that about people getting desperate or whatever, and what I see is angry white men getting very desperate and shooting shit up. That's what I see, which is that's a whole other story. But something I wanted to ask you, Sam, like, when you're talking about seeking reparations, is this something? This might be like bizarre, but is this like a class action suit? Like, is this something that can be pursued as in that way?
So from what I've heard, we have tried to sue in the past, but the problem is the country has, what's it called? It's like sovereign immunity. So you cannot sue the US government unless they allow you to. So I think that's one of the issues that we have run up against. So we have to go through Congress. That's why we're having the issues that we have, even though Biden actually could just sign an executive order, because that's how they did. He could do an executive order to force the study, and then from there, Congress could push through reparations.
I mean, what you're talking about is the piece that's sitting there right now that would initiate the study, which to me is sort of just like political speak for not doing anything. And
that's why we were fighting to have provisions put in to make it where the study had to be completed in a certain amount of time, so they wouldn't be studying for like 10 years, and then after the study there would have to be like a conclusion and some form of. But that's been a trial, because again, we don't have anybody who's really working for us. Even like Sheila Jackson Lee, she's a Jamaican American. I think she's Jamaican, but yeah, so she's not even ADOS. So again, like, the person who's leading the charge for a reparations bill isn't even a Black American, and she doesn't even really care about it like that.
So who do we need to be doing this? Who do you want to be doing this? Like, are there people that need to be brought in that are not, in there?
We're about to go into the next election cycle. So from what we're being signaled, they're pretty much telling us it's going to be dead. Like, HR 40 is going to be dead because everybody's going to start ramping up and moving into the new election cycle. Me personally, I'd like to see a Cori Bush or Jamal Bowman, preferably Cori Bush, take up HR 40. Black American, I think she's actually on the committee that falls under anyways. Like, I think that would be, depending on, so that would be for what, going into for 2022 to 2024. And we'd like to see the new bill that's introduced have more teeth, because right now it's just kind of for Black Americans. It's not for Black Americans who descend from chattel slavery. It needs to be more specific. There's like some things that need to be worked out in that bill to make it better.
Yeah,
but that's just where we are right now. Like, to be honest, right now it's a big education campaign, because Karen Bass, when she was head of the CPC, she told me straight out, she was like, she really was like, reparations isn't going to go through Congress. She's like, you're going to have to go through the people. Like, she was very uninterested in reparations when we had that meeting with her.
Because it's not popular. It's not popular. But
no, 2019, the end of 2019.
Because it's not popular.
It was very unpopular then.
And it's still not popular enough. And I think that you're right. It's an information campaign. That's what I feel like I'm trying to do.
People have to understand, though, reparations is moving faster than gay marriage. Like, 10 years ago, reparations was polling at like 3%. Like, we're over 35%. That's a massive amount of support in a very small amount of time. Like, we even have some Republican support for reparations, not in the leadership, but in the base. So, like, I just think it's one of those things that they just need to do it. And they keep talking about, well, people be angry and people might come for you. Like, look, people kill us now. And to be perfectly honest, when we start opening these stores and when Black people start, hiring people, like, we're not a tribal people. We're going to hire white kids. We're going to hire the Mexican kid in the neighborhood. We're going to hire everybody, because that's how we roll. Like, there's going to be stuff we're going to want to fix up our communities. A lot of Blacks and Latinos live in the same community. So if you're a Latino person who lives around a bunch of Black people, that means the quality of your schools going up, the quality of your neighborhoods going up, your property values going up. So a lot of people are just like, well, they don't care about it because they don't see how it affects you. But we are talking about putting a quadrillion dollars into the system over the course of 80 years. Like, think about that type of money being pumped into the US economy. Like,
yeah,
people just have to think about this. Like, there's just a lot more that can be done. And to be perfectly honest, look at all the things that Black people have created with nothing. Music, like the way we've taken over sports. Like, we've been able to do so many things, accomplish so many things, make so many great things. Like, what do you think this country will look like after 40 years of Black people having money, being able to fully integrate into society like we've never been able to?
And that's what scares the hell out of a certain segment of the population.
It doesn't. It makes me think I envision Wakanda. That's what I think.
I'm saying
I do. I think no. I do. I think that is the vision. Obviously, not that sci-fi and ridiculous in the center of the earth and all that, but that concept of this much higher civilization that would exist if not for constantly being.
Yeah, I always like to say Star Trek without space travel.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. Like that. And that's how, but when you say what would the Black community look like, I'm hoping for Wakanda. That's what I want to see, you know? I mean, but yeah.
Sam, thank you so much for coming on the podcast as always. Where can people find
you?
What are you working on? Obviously, we're always happy to chat with you. So tell us.
After Thursday, I'm on break. It's the end of the year. It's the holidays. I'm going to take a break. This has been a long year. Next year is going to be insane. You can find us at Reset Race on YouTube, at Reset Race on Twitter. And yeah, we are here. It's going to be a little slow on the videos for the rest of the year, but we do have an interview with Dr. Darity that we're going to release for Christmas. And me, Mud, did interviews with John Del Vento when he had his channel. So we're going to be releasing those on our channel because he's kind of part of the family. So
yeah, guys,
we'll have a little bit of good stuff for you over the holidays.
If you guys are not subscribed to Reset Race, highly recommend. There's always good content. And you get the John Brown list on there. Yeah, no, I like it. And it's really good stuff. And even when you put up stuff that's older but relevant and just something that I wouldn't have otherwise come across and see, like, I appreciate it.
Well, this is what we do. Yeah, we are building that coalition because this is how it has to happen. We have to share our platforms and make sure that the message is getting out there. There are no egos here. It is very important to understand what we're up against. And the more we build it, the stronger we're going to get. And of course, the conversation is extremely enlightening. Yeah. It was great to have you. And of course, we hope you have a great Christmas and New Year's. And I am sure we will be speaking. We'll be speaking with you in 2022.
Well, no, originally, Sam, what I really kind of wanted to do is I don't know, did you tell her what I was like I'd love to coordinate something. We've had several Native American activists on the show, and I would love
that.
Thank you.
I would love that. No, please. Yeah, I would love that. I'd love to do something with you guys, and I'd also like for them to come on Reset Race too, because like, if you notice, if you listen to the show, sometimes I'm like, okay, that's enough of that, because I don't like talking about people who aren't here to talk about themselves. I don't know enough.
That's the thing, so I would love to have that.
Love that.
Okay, good. Because I'd love to have
because it's a respect thing. I think that's wonderful.
I would love that. Jay Cyrenize would like to come back on. Obviously, we'd love to speak with him. And of course, Mark Charles, who ran for president.
Yeah, we've had a couple really good activists. Yeah. And you're right. What their needs and your needs and what you're owed and what they're owed are two totally different, unrelated things. And I really would think that would be a good conversation. So the next time, hopefully
I think so too. I would love that. Nope, did I lose you? Nope, did we freeze? Is that you? Uh-oh. Uh-oh. Did we freeze? I think we're frozen.
All right, guys, let us know you can hear us.
We're back.
Are we
We lost internet.
Check. Help.
We lost internet.
Let us know we're alive.
Okay, so we are back.
We are.
But I don't know if anybody else will be on here. If we'll get,
guys, let us know you can hear us.
I think we're back. They might have all given up on us. Oh, we're good.
Sam,
can you
take
make
over
that
the
go
channel
away?
Before you cut. You know, Mario, what's the matter?
We will have our friend Sam back. She's great.
Yeah,
I dig her. So we do have some stuff. We have some focus on Florida stuff,
yes,
but I gotta look some.
But now we got to get that all situated again. Oh, we got slides. That's interesting. So of course we.
Do you see how I did?
We didn't want to.
Do you see his eyes?
Yes, we didn't want to disappoint you guys. Which of course is Focus on Florida, which is our Sunday special. As you know, we have a lot of crap that goes on here, but I think the best place to start is obviously Amazon is in the news. We saw what happened in Illinois the other day. Obviously, the wave of tornadoes, which was totally devastating. And by the way, a big FU to the liberal class who came after Rand Paul because he's rejected signing legislation on FEMA money in the past, and he requested federal aid from the federal government the other day. That money's not for him. That money is for the residents of Kentucky that are suffering right now. But everything has to be politicized because that's how our country operates. So anyway, we know about the travesty and tragedy that happened at the Amazon warehouse facility in Illinois. We have no doubt that that is going to be a massive class action lawsuit against Jeff Bezos. So, of course, what do you do when the citizens get hurt? You don't actually improve conditions. No, you just replace them with robots. That's what you do. So Amazon opens facility in South Florida because, of course, they do.
And it's in Pembroke Park, by the way.
And of course, what's Pembroke Park? A very, very working class black area. Yeah. So Amazon opens facility in South Florida with more robots than workers. Ain't that something?
New Amazon robotics delivery station is the first in Florida, and they're saying they've streamlined the process. So basically what you have is a company taking complete advantage of a situation and nobody gets jobs.
Amazing.
That's the thing. So they're coming in to take advantage of a neighborhood, of a community, of a tax break, of whatever they're getting.
And what makes it
nobody
even better,
gets jobs.
What makes it even better, and this is something I would talk about with our state senator, Chevron Jones, they're not even hiring people locally that could use the work and the money. No, why do that? Let's just create robots and screw the people who live locally.
Well, Town of Pembroke Park Mayor Jeffrey Jacobs said that Pembroke Park has had no new developments in a long time. Having Amazon in Pembroke Park is a blessing as it brings much needed jobs to our diverse community.
There are none.
They're robots, dude. Like, oh my God. So this is how
much money did they grease your wheels with
exactly
in order to get this done? Smart Alec.
It's perfect fit for Pembroke Park, not to mention other new business developments are following. I'm grateful to have Amazon here, and I look forward to what the future holds for my town. Could you be more of a corporate whore? Oh my God, I'm so grateful to have Amazon here. Nobody's grateful to have Amazon.
And what do you think happens when you bring a facility the size of Amazon into your community? Property taxes go up. And what does that mean? Well, as a good transition, Florida residents see highest rent increases in nation. Report shows.
Lending Tree reports Florida saw a 29% increase in rent since the beginning of the year, and it is the highest in the country.
And where do you think?
We're number one.
Where do you think the most expensive rates for rentals are in the state of Florida? Guess what? In blue areas. So the whole idea that this is a
29% increase in 1 year.
Yeah. Well, we talked about this the other day with Michael Albert, guest of the show, author of No Bosses, The New Economy. As we talked about with Carol Roth, conservative from Chicago, who wrote the book, The War on Small Business. This is the issue with centralized planning. Pembroke Park is a very densely populated area. And when you add more to the community that isn't actually benefiting the community, you exacerbate the problem. because rates will go up, and that's what's happening.
But I do want to point out that something that is really frustrating about this is specifically in Florida is there's mass amounts of overdevelopment and construction. So there's tons of new developments, there's tons of buildings, tons of housing. It's just not affordable for anybody. So a lot of it just sits there empty.
We don't actually go through the process of actually tearing down these particular areas.
Yeah.
And so I think it goes without saying that there is so much that could be done with, redevelopment. There's also so many old buildings in South Florida that could use the demolition because of the asbestos problems, the Chinese drywall. There's so many issues. And yet that never seems to happen because our elected officials are on the take from the rich land developers who just want to make and go. And that's that.
Speaking of on the take.
On the take.
So
the University of Florida launches formal investigation after reports of the destruction of COVID-19 research data.
So it wouldn't be a focus on Florida without, our COVID corner. So a formal investigation has been launched by the University of Florida after an internal report detailed a culture of fear among faculty members claiming political influence on campus, as well as instances of pressure to destroy and delay publication of COVID-19 research data. Vice President of UF Research, David Norton, announced the investigation in an email to faculty and staff Friday morning. The email indicates the results of the investigation will be made public upon completion, did not give a timeline, but they became aware of violations of the policy on research integrity, and they have been given the information about the reported destruction of the COVID research data. So they have just launched an investigation, but you know what? If there was enough red flags to launch an investigation, that ship sailed. It's already so ugly. I can assure you, it's not nothing. It's a big thing.
We will be speaking with Rebecca Jones, who, as you know, was the COVID researcher in the DeSantis administration who was fired and is now running for Congress in Florida's 1st district against Matt Gaetz. She is definitely a wealth of knowledge on this issue about suppressed data, about COVID-19. Look, the problem is that on the Democratic side, it is too much regulation. And on the Republican side, it's no regulation. So we can't win. When you talk about being centrist or in the middle, that is where it makes sense to have a conversation. But the extremism is what dominates our political sphere, especially in the midst of a pandemic that's still going on.
External pressure to destroy de-identified data, barriers to accessing and analyzing the de-identified data in a timely manner, and barriers, blah, 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 blah. Basically, they were suppressing information and not putting it out there and scaring professors to not share accurate information.
Shocking, right?
It's beyond fascist. Yeah. It's very fascist.
Yeah, that's the whole thing. This is where they talk about authoritarianism, fascism, and totalitarianism, communism, because what you're seeing is the extremes of our society just completely run amok. Yeah, and that ain't going to work. So with that said, we have a not so good story to share.
No, we don't. So for people who are,
I happen to like these geese. I think they're cute.
They're really nasty. Okay, first of all, I love birds. Put that out there. I do. I love birds. But geese are nasty birds. So the thing is that we have these geese in South Florida. They're Egyptian geese. They are not indigenous here.
Right.
They are not a native species. They were brought in as like all others, like the iguanas, like other things. And because of the temperate climate, they can just thrive. So a lot of our subdivisions, including the one I used to live in, had these Egyptian geese. They're loud. They're in the way and they crap everywhere. And so a lot of these places don't want them there. So what they did was apparently they medicated the geese, and then apparently a loud noise happened and the geese flew over the lake and ended up landing in the lake while medicated, and the geese drowned. Oh. So, and this was in Miramar. This was a Miramar community, a Miramar subdivision.
We'll have to talk to Sheila about this
there was mass goose death.
Geese death.
Mass.
Geese is the proper.
No, I understand that, but death of gooses.
She's screwing up the words.
No, I know it's geese. But so anyway, that was something that happened. And we actually have a Florida Bites and it's full of reptiles. We're going to try to get through it if we don't lose our internet.
Yeah, let's hope it doesn't happen.
But guys.
But one more thing for the day before we go.
This guy. So this guy.
Who's Jamie Grant?
Jamie Grant is a Florida legislator, and I do not remember what district he's in, but he was given basically tasked with a commission, $30 million for cybersecurity funding.
You gotta love all of that defense money that
oh,
gets
thanks,
spent.
Sam. So this guy was tasked with this big cybersecurity mission, and it comes out that he, Mr. Jamie Grant, spent $391,000 renovating his office.
That's great.
We're sitting here talking about people not having a place to live, but he spent $391,000 renovating his office.
Like, seriously, do you really have to be a sociopath in order to do something
like
this?
Like, you just really do.
Like, the idea that it never... How about if he spent $30,000 renovating his office and just thinking, yeah, this might not be that ethical. No, but let's go for broke. And it was almost $400,000.
It's absurd. It's absurd. But so
most people can't afford to live in a $400,000 house.
And this is what he spent on his redecorating his office. These are not people that we need representing us. At all. Anybody who would do that is somebody that ought not be representing you. I just want to say, when Reese was really little, my son Reese, I would do this thing where I would go 1 mouse, 2, and he would go mice. 1 goose, 2 geese. I'd say 1 moose, and he'd go 2 yak. And it was it was just our joke. It wasn't because there's no meese.
Fair enough.
But anyway, so that was sort of our joke. But it reminded me of that.
We desperately need to get a producer for this show, preferably somebody who is in college and can get course credit, at least for the next upcoming semester.
That's his nice way of saying we have no money to pay.
So, well, no, we have some money, but we don't have money to give somebody a full-time job. We will compensate them in whatever way we can. But that is an important next task, especially if we're going to continue doing 2 days a week on the show. Jen is of the mind that we need to stop doing Sundays.
I feel like Sundays just sort of like sucks the whole day out.
So I guess, I guess we could do Monday and Wednesday. I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing. I know they are kind of close in terms of dates, but
we do different things. Yeah. It's not like we do the same.
Which is fine.
But I don't like.
If you want to switch it, we'll switch it. That's fine. We can do that.
I mean, I don't know what you
guys
think.
So I think that that's what we'll do. I mean, Monday
what
night
about
was
John
original.
Holder? John Holder got.
Can't say who though. He's working for somebody else.
He's
somebody who has more money.
He got poached.
Yeah, he got poached.
He got poached to somebody. Recruited. He did.
And he got recruited to somebody that we
He got recruited to somewhere we don't particularly care for, but he definitely now has a paying gig.
And we're happy for him.
Absolutely.
That's what matters. And so at the end of the day, we do need to find somebody who can assist. We do pretty well on our own, but we need to take it to the next level, especially if we're ever going to grow.
I'm not liking it.
So that's our task. And if you know of anybody, particularly who may be let's say a senior in high school or in college, we need
someone who's very
get
organized.
Course credit, that is very important.
They need to be very organized.
And they don't have to be here. I mean, if they could be local, like if they went to Broward College or Nova or FAU or something like that, that would be wonderful. But of course, it's not a prerequisite. No. So just something to consider. We are going to do that.
Do we have anything interesting coming up?
Yeah, we have a surprise that I was going to announce on the show.
I don't know that I like that when you do that.
Bo of the Fifth Column will be our main guest on Wednesday evening.
Ooh, so love him.
And
everyone knows I love him.
We may have another super special guest as well.
But we have a candidate also. We have a candidate on Wednesday. Ryan Morales. Where is he?
Ryan is running for the Commissioner of Agriculture for Florida. He may get bumped. I'm not sure. We'll see. He'll understand.
Okay.
It's business.
It's business. But Bo is very,
Bo is going to be here no matter what. It's a question of whether the other special guest may be hopping on the hopper,
You should have opened with the Bo thing earlier when you came in. And
you were having a good mood anyway. Now it ends on a really high note. And then, of course, we've got a slew of guests that are coming up.
Next Sunday, we have Alton Pete.
Yep, and Rebecca Jones, who we mentioned, is going to be coming on to talk about her race for Congress. And then, of course, we have our Festivus for the rest of us.
Festivus live stream on the 22nd, guys. We will be having the airing of grievances. We have a bunch of cool guests lined up, and there will be the feats of strength. There will be special Festivus decor.
Very interesting candidate who's going to come on the 26th of December, the day after Christmas. She is Martha Bueno. She is running for the city commission in Miami. She is a libertarian. And here's what's interesting. She takes no corporate money whatsoever.
There you go.
So we are more than happy to have a candidate like that
Absolutely.
come on our podcast. And then finally, and I know you guys are going to love this one, on December the 29th, our final show for the month of December is going to have none other than award-winning director Billy Corbin from Miami. You guys know him for Cocaine Cowboys, but of course he has done a hell of a lot more than that. Works with Adam McKay on a number of big projects. And of course, he is more or less the guru when it comes to Because Miami and Because Florida. So there will be a lot of interesting things to talk about with him. We hope you guys are doing well. Enjoy the rest of your football Sunday, and we'll see you on Wednesday.